$4,450,000 lost in one hit. And this was the title of Exponential Blueprint edition number 32. So shall we go and have a look at this edition and see what are the main lessons, what are the main points that I'd like to bring to you today? Okay, let's come to the story then. So what was this edition all about? The edition effectively is about really the risk you don't see. The risk you don't see that will kill your valuation. And usually the risk that you don't see is the one that will be the fastest in killing your valuation. So there was an example of a client I met a few months ago. He was waking up at 11:47 in the evening because the phone rang and the biggest customer had just filed for bankruptcy. So overnight, it lost 40% of the revenue of the business. Now, that's obviously quite an extreme situation, but unfortunately, there's been a statistic where we find that 43% of businesses that effectively have a disaster like this one usually never recover. And most of the time, when they stop trading, they will never restart. Okay. Now, in the newsletter, you will find also a tool to calculate your valuation risk in 3 minutes. And you go 3 parts. This one is the first part. How do you take your 3 risk scorecard now with part 1, intellectual property? Now, the newsletter goes on about the moat around your high valuation triangle. The high valuation triangle is made about three key steps. Now, each step is part of the triangle, and each step is part of the high valuation code. I just repeated them here now for you. IP monetization. You need to turn your unique ideas into recurring revenue stream. Then succession planning, build a leadership, yeah? So the business thrives without you, and then eventually going from local to global. What is this message particularly related to? Now, anyone is stuck and he wants to scale in the business. Yeah, that's why we have invented or we created this phrase called from stuck to scaling. Or you think you are invisible to investor. So the other transformation we're looking to achieve with you is to go from invisible to investable. Okay. Now, what are the examples of risk in IP monetization? There could be leaks of the IP property. For example, if you start trading and your ideas is fantastic, but you do not protect it, trust me, you are actually creating a big risk for yourself, Weak licensing contract, you don't manage the contract well. As I always say, copycats, for example, as I always say, it's fundamental that when you establish your IP monetization, you protect it and then you profit. Remember these 2 words, protect and profit. Succession planning. Succession planning, what are the threats? Well, for example, the sudden leadership loss. Or when, for example, there's too much dependency on one decision maker. Which is why we'll say, especially in the scale-up phase, the founders changes personality effectively. It goes from doing everything to let go and to become a CEO. Then we're going to the other step of the high valuation triangle, which is going global. What are the threats there? Well, there's no shortage of threats. You got geopolitical instability, you got local situation like compliance gaps, currency shocks. I mean, I've been through so many of them, and currently I'm actually doing acquisitions in countries in Africa and Eastern Europe. And trust me, there's a lot to study there before you make an acquisition. I act like an investor. Okay. So the investor don't just price your business depending on the number on what you earn, but they also want to see how well you survive to a shock. And this is where you got the second part of your test. Find your weakest side here on part two, succession planning. Let me give you a case study of failure, and one of them is Kodak. Now, Kodak, they actually owned the patent for digital photography in the 1970s, but they did nothing with it. They didn't think that anyone was going to disrupt the market. They failed to reinvent and globalize their IP on time, and eventually they collapsed. So, what's the founder takeaway here? If you do not protect your IP, someone else will take it away, take effectively the value away from it. Yeah. Any evaluation will vanish. So remember these two words, protect and profit, both of them. You don't profit without protecting. You don't protect without profiting. So these are the things that are absolutely fundamental. Let's come now to a case study of success. Microsoft built a global resilience. They saw risk in leadership vacuum when Bill Gates stepped down. So they decided to really plan succession years ahead, first with Steve Ballmer and then with Satya Nadella. They went really aggressive about making their business global. And also they created so many ways to monetize their IP through Azure, through Office 365, also gaming as well. The result, they tripled market cap in under a decade. So what's the takeaway for you, founder? Succession planning is fundamental. It's not a cost. It's an insurance policy for your valuation. So control obsessed owner, take notice of this, Not only you will stop burning out because that's one of the consequences of controlling everything, but you will also benefit. Your valuation will go higher. What's the point in having 90% of something that is worthless as opposed to 8% of something that is worth $1 billion? And if you think 8% means you can't control the business, think again. There are millions of ways to find the right deal at the right time with the right people. Here, there's a video about the shock about Titanic. Now, many people think, what's the Titanic got to do with risk management? Well, there's so much relevance here. When the Titanic was approaching iceberg, it was after there were so many warnings about the iceberg hitting the ship if it didn't slow down. Didn't slow down, hit the iceberg, and there were 1,500 lives lost. The lifeboats were not prepared, so people died, and so that was the end result of the disaster of the Titanic. How do we compare this to a situation that might happen in your business? Just think about this. What if you lose your only customer? Like the previous example, the $1,450,000 lost in just one night, yeah? What's it like to lose the key member of staff, the key salesperson who've been effectively making a difference in your business, Again, these are really very, very important questions to answer. And now let's come to insurance. Now, many people think insurance is just compliance. It's not. Insurance is valuation protection. Now, let's go back to a fact. 43% of businesses that are hit by a major disaster never reopen. So what happens without insurance? One incident can effectively end decades of work overnight. Now, there are so many ways to insure risk, So if you are not sure about it, click the tab below and get in touch with me. Now, 75% of uninsured small businesses fail within 2 years of a major loss. Okay. So even if you got cash reserved, unfortunately, usually they cannot replace coverage when the worst happens. Average uninsured loss from a single cyber attack in 2024, average, yeah, could be more, it could be less, is $4,450,000. That comes from IBM. So think about this. If you're storing data, you're already a target. Protect it like a physical asset. Now, let's give another example about Disney. Disney in 2016, an hurricane protection saved them from $170 million in lost park revenue after Hurricane Matthew. So that avoided earning miss that could have really destroyed shareholder trust. So the lesson is, it's not just about assets, it's about really the investor and the share price. I also name examples. Sony, 2011, there was a cyber attack. So $171 million direct cost. Okay. Cyber liability insurance softened the blow. So there was a lot less loss. So cyber risk are not just for tech companies. Every brand is a click away from crisis, especially with quantum computing, especially with artificial intelligence. Okay. So that's really, really fundamental for you to know. Apple, now the global supply chain insurance meant that even when in 2011 there was an earthquake in Japan, where there was obviously a key supply was it. Protection from production delays were really instigated through insurance. So production delays were absolutely minimum. So when you have a supply chain to manage, you need to protect it through your customer promises and valuation multiple. Again, insurance is an important part of this. Nike, business interruption insurance kept earnings steady during Vietnam factory flooding. So you never know what's going to happen to a country. Country disruption can help production. Here I got a video with a very fascinating story about Gavin Oldham. Now, Gavin Oldham was someone who effectively created what we can call the democratization of share trading. He wanted every one of his customer to become a shareholder in the business, and suddenly ask himself the question, how am I going to make so many thousands of people becoming a shareholder? And that's how share trading started with him. Now, insurance fits very well in the high valuation triangle, okay? And here I'm mentioning about IP monetization, succession planning, and going global. Don't forget about political risk insurance, key person insurance, IP infringement insurance, okay? There's also an invitation if you want to have a moat audit, your valuation moat audit. Don't forget that your moat is about protecting, but it's about profiting as well. So protect and profit. Now, fund risk management and insurance checklist, there is where we make a list. So the recommendation is to map your single point of failures in IP, succession, and international operation, okay? So always run through your insurance program, review it frequently so that you can be in control. Always ask yourself the question, am I underinsured? Always think about the IP, the key person, director and officer, cyber, political risk, and trade credit. So there's a side-by-side case study here. Again, there's a LinkedIn post here. Then there is our usual expert corner from Indonesia. from Mergers and Acquisition from Margaret. Margaret today talks to us about the timelines in M&A and the cost of delay. So don't forget about value erosion and loss of momentum. Then you have a link again to our podcast, so you can watch our full podcast between me and Margaret. Don't forget, Margaret has been protagonist of 14 M&A operation. So yeah, she's very, very experienced. So don't forget the final word from this newsletter. Your high valuation triangle is your castle. Risk management is the moat. Insurance is the water that fills it, okay? Investors do not fund castles without moats, and they won't overpay for a business that can prove its resilience effectively. Again, thank you so much for joining me on this journey. It's exciting to have this newsletter as it is. And I would like to announce that very soon there will be a new edition of the newsletter, private newsletter. Follow me on this channel and don't forget to subscribe. It'll be fantastic to have you part of this channel as well on a regular basis. It's fantastic to see all the support. There's so many of you, 43,000. I would have never thought about this all in 2025. So thank you very much, and I'm just gonna hope to see you on the next video.